let me talk about what is the mistake which generally people do when it comes to equity investment. Now, let me talk about a very interesting example. Okay. And it's a very interesting story to explain what is a mistake which people do when it comes to averages. If you read any personal finance article, it says generally that on an average, equity market gives around 12, 13 or 14% return. I don't want to get into exact numbers because you cannot predict, but on average, it gives you around 12, 13% return, okay, from a long-term perspective. The moment you hear the word called as average, the first thing which your brain gets anchored to, acha, okay, 12% return, that means 12% every year. But this doesn't mean, this is not how averages look like. Let me give you a very interesting story about mistake what people do with averages. There was one person who had to cross the river, okay, and he read somewhere the average depth of water is 4 feet. He did a very simple maths. I am 6 feet. The average depth of water is 4 feet. So I'll be able to easily cross the river. Only when he started walking, okay, there was a place where the water was very deep. He didn't know swimming and he drowned over there. And that's what, unfortunately, people do mistakes when it comes to equity investment. They're not able to understand the word called as averages. Averages doesn't mean 4 feet everywhere. Averages mean some places you will make good returns, some places you will make less returns, but on average you will make around 12, 13% return. Let's look at the journey of Sensex in the last 40 years to understand the word called as averages. Let's imagine I'm talking to you and you are my client and I tell you, sir, please put money into equity market if you have to create wealth. And what do I mean by creating wealth? That means you can make returns higher than inflation over a longer period of time. That's what I mean by creating wealth. Please put some money into equity to create wealth. And you'll say, okay, fine. What is equity? I say, sir, you're investing into businesses. And I give you my personal example. So in 1981, I invested, I got 50% return. Now your mind is anchored. Wow, 50% return. I want to put money in equity market. Let's say you join equity market 1982, 1983, 1984. For 3 years, you make no returns in equity market. You get very disappointed and you remove money from equity market. Unfortunately, the moment you removed money from equity market, the very next day or subsequent year, 1985, equity market gives 90% return. There's a feeling of regret and disappointment. Oh God, why did I remove money? Again, you jump again into equity market. 1986, 1987, for 2 years, you made negative returns. And we all know how loss feels like. The moment you make negative returns, again, you get disappointed. You feel cheated. You remove money from equity market. And the moment you remove money from equity market, 1988, again, market gives 50% return. But this time you are very smart. Why you're smart? Because you have seen a very interesting trend. 1 year market goes up, then couple of years market doesn't do well. Which happened? Again, market moved up, couple of years market doesn't do well. And this is a behavior which human beings have. It's called as finding trends. When I teach my son maths and science, generally when the answer is A and the second answer is B and the third answer is A, you know what he does? He stops reading the future questions. He starts taking A, B, A, B, A, B. And when I ask him, why are you doing that? He says, Papa, I've seen a trend. This is what human beings are. Right from birth, okay, we actually find trends. The beauty of equity market is there are no trends in equity market. Markets have a will of its own. Let's imagine you saw a trend that 1 year market does well and then couple of years is not doing well and you didn't stay invested. 1989, 1990, 91, 92, 93, for a couple of years, market did amazingly well and the trend was broken. So don't look at trends, stay invested. Now, I'll just fast forward it to a scenario to explain to you how bad times and good times go hand in hand. We all know 2003 onwards, equity market in India did very well. 2003, 2004, 2005, 2006, 2007. 5 years, amazing returns for equity market. But very few people know, before those 5 good years, we had 3 horrible years. 2000, 2001, 2002. These 3 years were very bad for equity market. After those 3 bad years of equity market, we had 5 good years of equity market. And after 5 years, 5 good years of equity market, when we all of us thought that there is no other asset class better than equity, 2008 equity market corrected by 54%. And in 2008, when we thought that the world will end because there was so much negativity, it almost felt as if we'll go back into Stone Age. 2009, market rebounded back by 80%. What I'm trying to say with a very simple chart is that this is how average returns look like. Average return doesn't mean that you will get those average returns every year. Some years will make good returns, many years will make no returns, some years will make slightly negative returns, and then few years you'll also have horrible returns like a 30-40% correction. That's how you have to be as an equity investor. This is the psychology you should have when you are an equity investor. Once you've understood how averages look like, let me just show you a very interesting point. You remember I talked about Manmohan Singh and the UPA government and the upper circuit. It happened on 18th May 2009. This clearly shows why timing the market is a sin. Stay invested, never time the market. Now, this is a very interesting and a very good data point and a chart. And if you understand this chart, honestly, you'll become a very, very good investor. All of us got very scared, and I would say very, very scared in the month of March when we saw our hard-earned money getting corrected by almost 36%. This is a chart which shows by what percentage market corrects from the highest point to the lowest point, okay, every year. This year, 2020, in the month of March, we saw markets correcting by 36%. Sensex was at 42,000 level. It went to 26,000. It was a 36% fall. There's a very interesting line said by a scientist called as Madame Curie. Madame Curie was the first woman to get a Nobel Prize. In fact, she was the first woman to get Nobel Prize twice, and that too in two different fields. She says something very interesting, which I like. She says the only way to defeat fear is to understand fear first. And what is that fear of equity market, which we all of us have? That market corrects, and it corrected by 36%. Let's look at data of last 30 years. Is this the first time where market has corrected by 30% or 30% and more? Let's look at data. 1990. This is the intra-year fall. What do you mean by intra-year fall? A fall from the highest point to the lowest point in that given year. 1990, equity market, which is Nifty, corrected by 32%. 91, it corrected by 35%. 92, we had a Harshad Mehta scam. It corrected by 45%. 93, it corrected by almost 27%. 94, it corrected by almost 20%. 95, touching 30%. 96, more than 30%. 98, more than 30%. 2000 and 2001, both of these years, 35% and a 40% correction. Even in a bull market of 2003 to 2008, look at 2004, we had a 30% fall. 2006, we had a 30% fall. 2008, we had a 60% fall. Now, interestingly, something very unique happened. 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. For 10 years, the fall of equity markets were very low. And this is not just in India, but across the world, whether you look at US, Europe, Australia, any emerging market, China, Brazil, anywhere, the falls in equity market had actually reduced. And majority of the people in the world started believing that equity market is less volatile these days. And what happens, it's a very natural tendency. If we see a trend which is not there from last 7-8 years, we tend to forget about it. That's very normal and that's human behavior. And suddenly in 2020, when we saw markets correcting by 36%, all of us got scared. And the only way to defeat fear is to understand fear. Is this the first time where markets have corrected 36%? The answer is no. How frequently it corrects more than 30%? Very frequently. Did it happen in the past? Recently it didn't happen. That's why we forgot about it. But understand, a fall, an intra-year fall of market correcting 20%, 10%, 30% is normal. It's like rain. It happens every year. I stay in Bombay. It rains very heavily every year. The trains get stopped. The highways almost get blocked. Since I'm staying in Bombay from last 40 years, I don't get surprised when rain happens because I know it happens every year. So for me, market correcting is like rain. Okay. Yes, there are few years where it rains a lot and it's the entire city comes to a standstill. Yes, these things do happen. Okay. I can't predict them. So my logic is very simple. Rains will happen every year. Markets will correct every year. But yes, I am also mentally prepared. You will have certain years where it will correct a lot. And once I understand this phenomena, and now I'm not worried of equity market from a long-term perspective. Honestly, if you want a view of equity market for the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, and 30 years, first point, equity market will correct every year. There's not even a single year where markets will not correct. That's the first point. Few years it will correct less. And once in a while, there will be times where market corrects by 20, 30 or 40 or 50%. Be mentally prepared for that. Once you are mentally prepared for that, honestly, then you don't have to worry about equity markets from a long-term perspective. Once you have understood fear, you'll stop fearing equity markets. Very important if you have to be a good, logical equity investor. Now, I'll just talk about the 3 asset classes I told you about: equity, fixed income, and gold. And how do you do asset allocation and how do you achieve your goal? Now that's the second point. Equity, I'll revise it once again. It's investing into businesses. The journey is not a straight line. You have good times, bad times, boring times. The volatility which you get is the price which you have to pay to get high returns. Equity is the only asset class which has the potential to beat inflation over a longer period of time. And that's why it's called as wealth creation. Now, let me introduce a second asset class, which is called as fixed income or bonds. What is fixed income? Fixed income is very simple. You lend money, you get interest and principal back after some period of time. The interest what you get is in line with inflation. Today, the interest rates in our country is low because the inflation in the country is low. So the real return, what is returns minus inflation, is practically zero. The interest rates in India are 5-6% because inflation is around 5-6%. Real return zero. If you go back to United States, the interest rates is around 1% because the inflation in that country is 1%. Effectively, how much you get? Zero. In Japan and many countries in Europe, you have negative interest rate. That means if you give 100 rupees to them, after 1 year, you'll get 99.5 rupees or even less because they have got negative interest rate. Why? Because in these countries, you don't have inflation, you have deflation. So what is fixed income? Fixed income gives you return in line with inflation. It doesn't help you create wealth, but it preserves your money. I'll repeat the point. It doesn't beat inflation, but it preserves your money. That's the advantage. Advantage is that it is very stable. The disadvantage is that it doesn't create wealth, but it provides stability. Equity gives high returns. It gives you returns higher than inflation. It creates wealth, but the disadvantage or the price which you have to pay is higher volatility. And then there is a third asset class, which is called as gold. A very interesting asset class. Indians love it. And whenever I come to Chennai, one of my relative or my wife or my mother or any of my other relative definitely tells me, please go to T Nagar, and they give me an order what to get in terms of gold. Okay. Indians love gold. Okay. Gold, we think it's an Indian asset class, but actually gold is not an Indian asset class. In fact, gold is not mined in India. Gold is mined in Africa. It is mined a little bit in Australia, in Latin America, a little bit in Canada and US and other parts of the world. There is not even a single good mining which happens in India. So gold is practically not an Indian asset class. Secondly, the value of gold is done in dollars. Okay, so the valuation happens across internationally in dollars. Secondly, it also is mined over there. We think that it's an Indian asset class. Holding gold is actually an international asset class because it's valued in dollars. It is mined across the world. Okay, so we think it's Indian. It's nothing Indian about gold. But how does gold behave and why should we have gold in our portfolio? Gold is a very good hedge for uncertainty. And what do I mean by that? So whenever there is uncertainty in the world, okay, think of gold like your parents. Okay, whenever we have tough times, okay, whenever we have very, very bad, tough times in life, which is the first thing which comes to our mind? Our parents. Okay, so whenever there's uncertainty in the world rushes towards gold, okay, as an asset class. And this is shown by data. 2019-20, when markets had actually had a lot of trouble, gold did very well. 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, these 4-5 years, there's a lot of, the equity market didn't perform. The world was going through panic. What happened? Gold did very well. So gold was around 10,000 grams, 10,000 rupees for 10 grams. It went to 36,000 level in matter of 5-6 years from 2013. So 2008 to 2013, when the world was in uncertain scenario, equity was not doing well, gold did very well. 2013 to 2019, when equity market was doing exceedingly well, gold was almost flat. For 6 years, gold gave no returns. And look at this is called as asset allocation. There are times when equity does very well. There are times when gold does very well. And there are times when fixed income does very well. Having a combination of this is called as asset allocation. What is asset allocation? When the world is in certainty, equity does very well. When the world goes to turmoil, for Indians, gold does very well. And when both of them are not doing great, fixed income with high interest rate gives us a stability. Having a combination of all three in simple terms is called as asset allocation. The reason why gold does very well from an Indian perspective is that whenever we have uncertainty in our country, what is the first thing which will happen to Indian rupee? Indian rupee will depreciate. And what do I mean by depreciate? So 1 rupee is $1 is 74 rupees. The reason why we get returns in gold, good returns, is because when the currency depreciates because of uncertainty, gold prices in India any which ways increase. Just to give you a simple example, in 1990, okay, or 1980s, $1 was equal to 7 rupees. Today, $1 is equal to 75 rupees. By the virtue of time, the currency, Indian currency depreciates, because of which any which ways we make returns in gold. So we make returns in India, we make returns in gold by two things. First, if India's currency rupee depreciates, and second is when the gold prices internationally moves up. So having some portion into gold makes sense. Okay. For anyone who says that we should not have gold in our portfolio, maybe he has not read history or doesn't understand economics. It is a good hedge for uncertainty. The mistake what people do generally is that they get overboard with gold. Gold is part of asset allocation. It is not the entire asset allocation. Ideally, having 10 to 20% of your portfolio in gold is right. Beyond 20% of your portfolio into gold might not be right because it doesn't create wealth from a long-term perspective. So gold should be there, but there should be a limit to gold. How to invest into gold? Yes, traditionally we have gone to physical way of investing into gold, but the new age method of investing into gold is gold mutual funds, or maybe investing into gold sovereign bonds. These are the two smart ways of investing into gold. Or maybe if you want to buy something in physical, buy bullions, okay, or gold coins. A bullion is a better way by which you can invest into gold. This is how I'll recommend people. So have a combination of this. Now, once you have understood that all these three asset classes are important, next question which all of us would like to understand, what is the magical formula of having the right asset allocation? How much should I have in equity? How much should I have in fixed income? How much should I have in gold? Can you please make the right formula for me? And interestingly, there is no right formula. Investments are not like science or physics where there are exact formulas, okay, where there's an exact answer to a problem. In this, answer to this problem is very unique. Everybody looks at money in a very different way. Everybody has got different goals when it comes to money. And this is something which is called a CT scan of a human brain. And why I put this CT scan of a human brain? When anyone has a profit, a certain part of the brain gets highlighted. And when somebody has a loss, a different part of the brain gets highlighted. Okay. Behavior says that, or psychology says that, even bio says that every human being is very different when it comes to how it looks at profit and loss. Some people by nature are very sensitive to loss, and some people by nature are less sensitive to loss. Okay. And there is no, and this is part of DNA, and you can't do much about it. And psychology and behavior is built right from birth, which is almost majority of it is hardwired right from birth. And then a little bit of it is because of our experiences which we have over a period of time. You can remove a dent on your car, but you can't remove dents which you have on psychology over a period of time. So it is very important to understand our own core behavior to decide how sensitive we are to loss, what are goals to decide our asset allocation. And that's where the role of a mutual fund distributor and an advisor comes into picture, because he sits with you, he understands your psychology, he understands your goal, and he builds up a right asset allocation for you to achieve your goals. I'll give you a very classical formula why intelligence is not required, but common sense is required over here. There was a person called as Mr. Harry Markowitz, who actually got a Nobel Prize for building a very complicated formula in terms of what should be the efficient portfolio in terms of various asset classes. When in a press interview, when he was asked that what is your ideal asset allocation and how do you approach money? Do you also use a similar formula to make your portfolio and achieve your goals? His answer was very simple. That formula was only for the Nobel Prize. My allocation is something very different. And when asked, so what is your formula? He said, I keep 50% into equity and 50% into fixed income. And then somebody asked him, so what is the logic of 50-50? He says, my logic is very simple. Years, days, and months when equity market does very well, I thank God I've got equity in my portfolio. And days, years, months when equity is not doing well, or maybe it corrects, I thank God I have got fixed income in my portfolio. With a combination of 50-50, I'm able to sleep very well. Look at the very interesting point which he said. His simple matrices was very simple, that I have to sleep very well. So I have to build a portfolio where I'm not anxious or worried about what happens to markets tomorrow or next month or next year. In any given scenario, I'll be able to achieve your goal. So have sufficient equity in your portfolio that you're not worried about your long-term goals. At the same time, have sufficient fixed income in your portfolios that you are not worried about equity market correcting by 20%, 30% or 40%. They act like shock observers. It's like cricket, where you have 4s and 6s to score runs. You also have 1s and 2s to defend the ball. It's like football, where you have forwards like equity, you have midfielders like gold, and you have defenders and a goalkeeper like fixed income. So having a right combination of all three of them in a proportion which is suitable to your risk appetite and your goal is very, very important. Lastly, I'll just finish up with like 2-3 points and then we'll open the floor for question. We in this world are too much obsessed with outcomes. If the outcome is good, we generally believe that the process is also good. I was just reading a very interesting article. In fact, day before yesterday. So it's a very interesting story about a couple, a husband and a wife. A husband buys certain mutual funds, which were doing very moderate, and his wife happens to buy stocks without informing her husband, and it was based on some tips given by a broker, and fortunately or unfortunately those stocks almost become 3 times. So she started believing, and which she actually says that she believes that she's much more financially smarter and intelligent than her husband because her stocks have done exceedingly well. And it might sound logically right, because on one hand, one person's mutual fund has given just mere like maybe a 12-13% return, but on the other hand, a woman's investor who has been guided by a broker, her portfolio has given 3 times returns. So based on outcomes, it's very natural for somebody to believe that he's much more smarter in terms of how they manage the money. You could have bought IPOs in the last 1 year and practically doubled your money in just matter of 1 day. You could have bought a CAMS IPO or a Burger King Burger King IPO, and you have doubled your money in just matter of 1 day. The idea is only outcome in isolation doesn't mean whether your process is good or wrong. And this is a very interesting metrics for you to understand. How should one take decisions when it comes to personal finance? A good process and a good outcome deserve success. A good outcome with a bad process is called as dumb luck. When you invest into stocks, so when a mutual fund manager, when he builds up a portfolio, it is not random luck. So basically, there's a lot of process which goes over there. Every fund manager and a bunch of analysts have got 15 to 20 years of experience when they're managing the money. Every analyst reads the balance sheet inside out. He meets the management. He listens to every quarterly conference call. He meets the customers. He meets the suppliers. He does forensic accounting to build a view on a stock. And that's how they built a portfolio. And a fund manager, based on the entire team's discussion, build portfolio. These are processes. I know investors who randomly buy stocks and make returns, and they might think they are smarter and intelligent. Outcome is good, but the process is bad. Yes, you made returns because of dumb luck, but the day luck starts going on the other side, the same money will become negative and the wealth might get eroded. So in personal finance, process is the most important thing to achieve your goals. What is process? Goal-based planning is process. Asset allocation is process. Doing a SIP in a logical fashion on a monthly basis and not worrying about the market is process. So sticking to process is most important. Chasing outcomes is the worst thing which people can do when it comes to money management. Lastly, I'll just talk about a few ideas and then we'll open the floor for questions. And let me talk about something very interesting about processes also. We all know success stories, but unfortunately for every success, there are many failures. Anil Ambani was the 6th richest person in the entire world in 2008. All his stocks, Reliance Natural, Reliance Power, Reliance Communication, Reliance Energy, Reliance Entertainment, everything was doing very well. Today we know practically he is bankrupt. What is happening? I'm not saying whether he was a good businessman or bad. Obviously, every businessman wants to do best from a long-term perspective. And that's why diversification is very, very important. We don't know which sector, which stock, which business might do well in the future. We are doing a session right now on Zoom. Zoom is a very simple platform which helps to do an online session. The market value of Zoom is more than the market value of the entire airline industry, which has been there for almost 100 years. Just try to sink this point. A market value of Zoom has zoomed actually in just a matter of 3-4 years. And thanks to pandemic, it has moved up exponentially only because the people are too optimistic about Zoom, and the value of Zoom today is more than the entire airline industry market cap of US. This is what happens. It's so impossible and practically difficult to predict the future. Amazon, I'm sure everybody is using Amazon these days. 20 years back, the biggest retail companies in the world have got disrupted by this. Who could have even imagined about it? Google, 20 years back, nobody had even heard about these kind of companies. And this is what I'm trying to say. Diversification is the only way to manage risk and hedge your portfolio. Once you have diversified your portfolios across stocks and across sectors, which obviously mutual fund does, your risk on a particular stock is gone away. And that's the best process which you can do to manage risk. Don't buy stocks and have concentrated portfolio. Have a diversified, good mutual fund portfolio to manage your risk. Then I'll just talk about few basic mistakes and then I'll open the floor for questions. I've seen generally people making 3 biggest mistakes. The first mistake is, unfortunately, of getting carried away by what others are doing. We are a social being. We love to remain in tribes. And by nature, we get too influenced by what others are doing. There's a very interesting study called as marshmallow test. A marshmallow test was done in 1980s. One of the best social experiment done on human beings. Small children around 8 to 9 years old were given a simple sweet marshmallow and they were asked, you can have 1 marshmallow right now, or you can wait for 15 minutes and you get 2 marshmallows. Science or maths or common sense would say that people would, or children would have waited for 15 minutes and taken 2 marshmallows. But data showed something very different. Data showed that 70% of the kids were not able to wait for 15 minutes and they happened to have the marshmallow. They thought this would have been one kind of experiment and maybe these kids are different, but this experiment was done across the world with different set of children across the world, and the outcomes were almost practically the same. Almost 70% of the kids across the world, wherever the experiment was done, were not able to wait for 15 minutes and they happened to have the marshmallows. We think we are grown up, but we are exactly like the kids, okay, in terms of how we behave and think. We think that there's a constant struggle which happens in our brain, a struggle of spending money right now, or the constant struggle of saving it for the future. So that marshmallow experiment always happens in our brain when we are taking every decision, whether to save or invest. Smart people are those people who understand the maths. They know they have got long-term future goals, and then they try to have control over their short-term impulse and temptation. One way I can just tell people from a behavior perspective in terms of how do you take care of this bias is select your friends and your surrounding and the people who influence you. Be very cautious about that, because your peers and your society plays a very big role in terms of how you will spend and save your money. If you're surrounded with people who spend a lot, it's very natural for you to get influenced in the similar fashion. Second mistake is too much of noise and information. A human brain is not designed for 24/7 information. Our human brain is not designed for absorbing so many breaking news which happens on a daily basis. Internet, radio, television, newspapers, magazine give us so much information which unfortunately only paralyzes the mind. It is said what is sugar to the body, similarly, that is a similar way what information is to the brain. The second thing which you have to do is have not excess information, but have actually noise filters. Stick to processes, stay away from noise as much as possible. The more you stay away from noise, the more less you see your portfolio, better you are from a long-term perspective. Lastly, a very classical example, we are social beings, and the simple shortcut we all of us use to take decisions is based on what others are doing. In fact, when I reflect at my life, majority of the decisions, right from what engineering I did, right to which elective I took in my engineering, which job I selected, to which MBA course to do, everything was based, and in fact, what job to select, in fact, where to go for vacation is also based on what others are doing. It's a very simple thumb rule which we all of us use all the time. We look at what others are doing, and it's a very simple mental shortcut. It might be good in some cases, but especially in the field of finance, this is the worst thing which you can do. All the biggest mistakes which have happened in the past when people have lost money is because they saw other people what they were doing and they started doing the same thing. Don't get carried away by what others are doing. Markets, emotions oscillate between greed and fear. Speak to your distributor, speak to your advisor, stick to a plan. Don't get bothered in terms of what others are doing. Stick to your own goals. Just others, if others are buying IPOs or if others are buying shares, no matter whatever they're doing, stick to your process and plan. And if you can do that, you will be able to achieve your goal. And lastly, I'll just finish up with a very last thought. And this is one of the most important thought when it comes to personal finance. A very interesting study done by Fidelity. This is one of the best mutual funds in the world. And they had a flagship fund which had a very good track record. And they wanted to make a marketing campaign around it to figure out how investors created wealth in this fund over a longer period of time. They wrote mails to all the investors who were the initial investors in the fund so that they can come with their stories and share how much wealth they created and how they created so much wealth. Unfortunately, not even a single investor replied back. When Fidelity and its marketing team went and had a discussion with them to figure it out, they realized majority of the investors, unfortunately, had died. And their children and their relatives were not even aware about this investment. And Fidelity came with a research report saying that to create returns, you don't have to be too smart. You have to just invest and forget. The best wealth creators are those people who just invest and they forget. This is what happens in equity market. Markets will always fluctuate. There's one thing which will always remain. Markets will always fluctuate. You have got two options. Either you can stay invested and forget about what's happening in the world and stick to your process and asset allocation, or you are 24/7 wired to what is happening across the world. You are 24/7 anxious, and in that anxiety, you do something wrong, which actually hampers your own portfolio. This bias is called as action bias. we have got a monkey's brain, and a monkey's brain says that, in fact, all the problems in this world originate from the fact that we cannot sit at one place without doing anything. Since we are designed as human beings to always run from one place to another, and that's history. Look at humans being in Stone Age or as hunters. They always were occupied with something else. It is very difficult to sit at one place not doing anything, and that's the biggest mistake what people do. They cannot sit with their portfolios from a long-term perspective, and that's the reason why they end up doing harm for their portfolio. This is one in a very fun way. I just thought a slide to just explain a lesson for all the people who have stopped their SIPs, unfortunately, and they missed the rally which took place in 7 months. How we tell children when they make errors or mistake that write 100 times that you will not make this mistake. You should always remember when you are doing SIPs, write it down. I was wrong about stopping my SIP. I'll not stop my SIP next time. It should be part of your DNA. Write it 1,000 times. Stick to processes. Stick to asset allocation. Keep it as simple as possible. We love complex ideas, but simplicity and common sense is what is required to create wealth from a long-term perspective. Lastly, how do you build your portfolio? Have growth assets, have equity in your portfolio, have safe assets like fixed income and FDs in your portfolio, have uncertainty assets which can manage uncertainty, gold, physical and digital, have something for emergency fund. Emergency is something which will never inform you before coming. So have money in saving account and liquid funds, have a health insurance, a big health insurance, and have a term insurance for yourself. If you do this basic stuff, honestly, it's simple. Personal finance is very personal. It's very simple. Unfortunately, we choose it to make it complicated.